Lucy Biggers was a climate change activist and influencer for the progressive outlet Now This. She even helped produce a video that helped AOC win her first election in 2018. But after the events of 2020, after getting married and starting a family, her entire mentality about politics and specifically climate change has changed fundamentally. She is here today to talk about her transformation and the myths that are propagated by the climate movement and by the socialists of our day. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. American meat delivered right to your front door. When you go to goodranchers.com/Allie and use my code Allie, you get $40 off your subscription. That's goodranchers.com/Allie, code Allie. Before we get into that conversation, I want to remind you of two things. Please subscribe to our channel across all platforms. You might think that you subscribe on YouTube because maybe you watch my videos every day, but you might not subscribe. But if you subscribe, it helps us out a lot. So subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. You should also subscribe to blazetv.com because that's where we give you exclusive content that you're not getting for free on Spotify and Apple and YouTube. We've got a parenting special with two parenting experts, very seasoned mothers, and they are the host of the podcast Mind of a Child. I love them, such sweet Christian ladies. We are talking about all the controversial parenting questions like spanking and discipline and all of that good stuff. So go to blazetv.com/Allie. When you use my code Allie, you will get 10%, I think. 10% off of your subscription. And this special will be available August 8th, by the way, but you'll also get access to all of our subscriber exclusive content. So that's blazetv.com/Allie. All right, let's get started. Lucy, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Could you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Lucy Biggers. I'm the social media editor at the Free Press. I also write for them a bit, and I'm a former climate influencer, former sort of lefty social justice warrior who has had a political evolution since becoming a mom, and that's the reason that I, get asked on a podcast like this.
Yes, you wrote an article and I saw the article and I just love hearing about people changing their mind and everything that went into that. Before we get into that transformative season of your life, can we go back to how you became a climate influencer?
Yeah, so I have worked in the news since I graduated college in 2012. I was at a local news station in Mississippi right out of college, and then I moved to New York and I found myself at this really cool progressive news startup called Now This News. And it was the height of sort of Bernie mania.
Yeah.
And coming off of, the Obama years, I guess I was just sort of primed to fall into that progressive mindset. It was sort of just the default in my newsroom. And I, coming from, a small town in Mississippi where I had worked, it was so cool to have all these young people that were my age from, different racial backgrounds and really interesting people. And the only thing that wasn't diverse about us was our mindsets about politics. So it was just an easy thing to fall into, and basically went from like being a Bernie bro girl to being one of the first people to ever interview AOC when she was coming up in New York. And so I have been part of the movement in those 20-teen years where it was really emerging. And then my beat when I was at Now This became covering the climate movement. And I say climate influencer because I was really an activist in a newsroom covering it like sort of like a megaphone for the climate movement. I didn't really look at my coverage very critically. And so over those, it's 2015 to 2021 was my time there. And that's really where I was very, very left, just based on working in a very progressive newsroom.
Yeah.
I think it was just an easy thing to fall into.
So you say you fell into it.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you were not raised progressive?
Yeah. So I grew up in Connecticut. My parents were Bush Republicans, I guess. I think I was in the Young Republicans Club in high school, actually.
Okay.
But you kind of grow up, I wasn't examining my beliefs then, so you just kind of, or whatever. And then I think for me, what happened was that at the same time that I was becoming left, it was this oppressor versus oppressed mindset that we talk about a lot now, where like it was like, oh, if you're white privileged, like you're an oppressor. Like that was sort of like a theme in the newsroom.
Do you think that you started learning that in college?
No, I didn't, because I was after that. I feel like in 2015 is when it took off, and I was already in this newsroom. And so I've described this before. It's like, it started off, we all wanted free college and free healthcare and like less inequality. And then all of a sudden, a few years in, it was like, oh, well, if you're white, you should not speak because you are an oppressor. You don't realize that you're racist. And so everything you're saying is going to come off as racist. So that ideology, as a young person who doesn't have a good foundation of what I actually believe, just kind of going along to get along, if people are telling me like I'm secretly racist and like I should just be quiet, I'm obviously going to do that because I want to be a good person and I respect my colleagues and their perspectives. And there is something to be said for listening to people of different backgrounds and honoring their point of view. I think that's really healthy. But what happened where I was working was it took it to like a more negative level. And so basically after working there for 6 years, it was sort of like, I had no idea what I actually believed because I spent 6 years just censoring myself to get approval from the group. And it manifested in just how I covered the climate change movement, not very critically, or all these different, protests at the time and social justice stuff. It was sort of just the beginning of what we kind of saw peak in 2020. But I was almost at the beginning lines of it because I worked in a very liberal newsroom in the 2010s. I almost saw it like first, I guess. And yeah, just not having that internal belief structure. And like now that I have kids, I'm like, oh my God, I have to like really inoculate them against this because it's so easy to fall into this like empathy trap, which I was reading your book on the way here. Yeah. And you talk about this a lot where it's like well-meaning people who have big hearts can very easily become susceptible to stuff that doesn't really want the best for society.
Yeah. How did you start covering climate change? Was that something that you were genuinely interested in, or was now this like, oh, like you're a cute young girl in the newsroom, we need someone to cover this, so here you go?
It was actually something I was genuinely interested in, and I love like positive stories, and I think how it started was covering the vegetable startup that's selling you bruised fruit to save it because it would otherwise go in the trash, or like a reusable cup brand or whatever, sort of positive little things. And then covering ocean plastic pollution, which we all know about now is a big issue. I was covering that in 2015, and then it was covering Standing Rock. And basically, I was really, really online. I think a lot, like now this is like so taken for granted, but you have to think about the 2010s. Like we didn't really know what the algorithms were doing to our minds. And so I was online, and how we published all of our content was through Facebook, through the Facebook newsfeed and videos. And so I was not only creating content, I was consuming content, and that was just spinning up my algorithm. Yeah. And then it became more about protesting and Standing Rock and going there.
And what's Standing Rock?
So Standing Rock was a big protest in 2016 against the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota.
Oh, okay. Now I'm remembering this.
I can't like tell what's like household like words or not. Like so it's, I don't know. I say it as if everyone knows. But that was a big protest that happened right between when Trump got elected, but Obama was still president. Yes. It was December of 2016. Yes. Yeah. So I covered that for Now This, and the videos that I made of that protest for like 6 months during 2016 got like tens of millions of views because we were just really ahead of what we now take for granted, which is like virality and really short clips, subtitles, like really to the point. Yeah. You don't really get the whole story. Like we know about it now, but at the time it was very new.
Right.
And I kind of was just following my interests, and also the algorithm was then feeding it back to me.
Yeah. Okay, that was the Dakota Access Pipeline and all of the protests. I remember there being some conservative coverage of the aftermath of that it looked like the protesters who were like, this is sacred land, Native Americans trying to say we've got to protect this, that there was a bunch of trash, right? Yes. Did you see that at the time? Did that ever give you pause of like, is this as in good faith as I'm making it seem like it is?
You hit the nail on the head, because actually my first piece that I wrote at the Free Press, because I'm not an editorial at the Free Press, I run the social media, but if you have an idea, you can like get it published. So my first piece I ever pitched was like, I covered Standing Rock, I helped it go viral, and now I regret it. And the kicker of that article at the end is, when I got home from Standing Rock and I saw a video of the trash, and I thought, should I make this video for our audience and cover that the trash was left behind? And I decided not to do it because I didn't want to sully the positive narrative that I had put onto the movement. And ultimately, I think it cost the town, it was 48 million. I mix up the numbers. It was, I think, 48 million pounds of trash that cost the town like $1 million to clean up, or I don't know.
Or
don't quote me on that. Or maybe,
yeah.
And like, which way is it? But it was a lot of trash.
It's a lot of trash and a lot of money.
And it was hypocritical. And like, I think that is what I call out now, where I have now kind of come out of the ideological closet, you could say, in the last few months, calling out the climate movement. And that was like the first seed that was planted, although I did not think about it really critically for years and to really acknowledge it, that the climate movement doesn't really care about the environment. They like to protest, and they really hate human industry, civilization. They hate the West, they hate America, and it's really a protesting movement more than an environmental movement.
This year's Share the Arrows is brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. Y'all, it is going to be here in like 2 months. Can you believe it? Oh my goodness. If you've been waiting, if you've been thinking, considering getting tickets, go ahead and do it. You are not going to regret it. I can promise you that. You will not regret coming to Share the Arrows. You will leave there feeling so inspired and so refreshed. I love a message that I received last year from someone who attended Share the Arrows saying, I walked out of there with zero fear of man. We are praying for the Holy Spirit to inspire every speaker and to give everyone there exactly what they need to be challenged and encouraged with the truth of God's word and amazing worship. Go to sharethearrows.com. Use any of the speaker's first name plus 15 when you press unlock on the Ticketmaster page to get 15% off. Go to sharethearrows.com to get your tickets today. That's sharethearrows.com. And before we get back into that conversation, let me tell you about We Heart Nutrition. I love We Heart Nutrition. I use their supplements every day. I still take their postnatal vitamin, and I take their iron supplement, their magnesium, their omega-3s. It's all so good. It helps me stay healthy and fight sickness and feel my best. And I'm just so grateful for the high quality of every ingredient that they put in these supplements. It all comes in the most bioavailable form, which means that your body can actually absorb the stuff that you're taking. Plus, this is a Christian pro-life company. They are donating a percentage of every single sale, 10% of every purchase, to pregnancy centers across the country, and they are helping save thousands of lives through that. Jacob and Kristen, who own We Heart Nutrition, they're awesome. They're the real deal. It's just a win all around. You are going to feel so good with We Heart Nutrition. Go to weheartnutrition.com. Use code Allie at checkout for 20% off. That's weheartnutrition.com, code Allie. So you are covering that, you're going viral. I'm sure that the affirmation that comes from going viral kind of validates your belief system as well. You said this was around 2016. What was the culture like at Now This? Obviously, it was progressive, but was there a feeling that even if I do have a question, if someone has a different idea or a different perspective, that they're not allowed to speak up? What was it like?
So I can only speak from my experience, and I feel like I am emotionally intelligent, so I'm reading the room and trying to just fit in with the group. And on top of that, we had Slack, which is like a messaging service that everybody uses in the office. And I think that really made it worse because you could see what everybody believed by like the memes that they're sharing, or the people who someone's getting canceled on Twitter that week. And they're getting, put up in our Slack channel and dragged by everyone in the newsroom. And you're going, oh, okay, so now saying that thing is not allowed. Now thinking this is not allowed. So it's not like it was over your head and saying, don't act this way. Like it was not like, and I was friends with all my friends. It was just sort of a slow spiral of silence where I stopped listening to my own internal critical thinking voice and my authentic opinions and started putting the beliefs of the group ahead of myself to fit in with the group.
Yeah. Okay, let's play this clip so people can see you in action when you were on Now This discussing climate change. No, it's sweet. There's nothing wrong with it. You did a good job. Here's shot one.
Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by climate change. But instead of being hopeless, I'm going to be proactive and figure out how I can live more sustainably. From single-use plastics,
I've committed to give up single-use plastic for the entire month. I got my sandwiches, no plastic involved.
to composting,
I'm on a mission to find out how my old food gets turned into compost.
to clothing recycling and more, I'm excited to explore how to live a more responsible life.
Okay, so this is 2019,
Yeah.
and I see what you mean, that clip is not political
Right.
necessarily. You're trying to make this into a positive story. So you were there for a while as someone who was on this beat, even after you covered that protest in 2016.
Yeah, so that protest in 2016 really kicked off this becoming my beat. And again, my personality is I'm very positive and I'm always looking for like a positive angle. So like my series was positive, but the like mainstream climate movement at that time and the culture, the social media groups I was interacting with and stuff were becoming very politicized. But I sort of carved out a non-political space within the movement, if that makes sense, because that just felt the most authentic to me. But what I realized later is I didn't cover all these topics the most honestly. For example, just like single-use plastic, focusing on Upper East Siders of Manhattan not using a straw isn't really as important as getting waste infrastructure in places like Guatemala, and just sort of misplacing where the solutions could actually come from and bringing it back onto the individual in the West where we have good waste infrastructure and putting it on us to like solve all of climate change because we have sort of some guilt just by living the modern life that we have. So that was sort of the underlying perspective, or I guess like motivation, was like, I have this guilt, I live this modern life, so I have to make content that sort of atones for it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Did you have climate anxiety during this time? Like you say that you were positive, but did you believe this idea that the world is going to end in 10 years that, Greta Thunberg and other people have propagated?
I definitely had that. I think it would like flare up during different times. You'd see a wildfire or a hurricane and you'd get really scared and go, oh God, this is happening, or different films would come out. Like Leonardo DiCaprio had a film in 2015, like Before the Flood, which now I feel like was just a projection from him. But it was really scary, and watching that and just being like, oh God, like we really have 10 years left. But obviously to function in the world, you're not going to be anxious every single second of the day. But like my mental like landscape was like, I have 10 years. And I think at one point, probably in my earlier 20s, being like, well, I can't have kids, or just like feeling guilty of like, well, I got married during this time. Like, what would my wedding be like? Can I have like a wedding because it's consumption? And just putting everything through this lens of a lot of guilt for just basically living, a life in America in the 20 teens.
Yeah.
It was just really a drag on my like energy, I guess, as a person. And I think one of the criticisms I get now is like, oh, well, you just gave up. Your anxiety is so bad that you just don't care anymore. And I'm like, no, that's not the thing. Is I think we should always protect the environment. And I think that climate change is happening to some degree and we can adapt to it. But right now, the way the movement pushes its plans of, just like covering the countryside and windmills or all these things are kind of distractions away from the things that we could actually really make an impact on, whether it's cleaning up litter or adaptability to climate change, et cetera. So I guess it's important for me to say, like, I still really do care about the environment, but it's more maybe like in a conservation way than what I see the climate movement pushing now, which makes no sense.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about just the other side of what looks like trying to protect the environment, like the windmills that you talked about. It takes fossil fuels to create those. Not that I think fossil fuels are bad, but that's something that climate activists say. But it takes fossil fuels to build them, and then there's really no way to discard them. It's not like they're biodegradable. They just enter into these landfills. And by the way, we're relying on China to create these windmills, import them over here. Also, they're bad for the air and for the birds and like so many things. And I feel like so many proposed solutions that come from the progressive side when it comes to climate change actually just makes things worse.
Yes.
And makes us devolve as a civilization without a big upside for the environment, which is strange because I assume that a lot of people in the movement are similar to you and that they really cared. They really do care and they really do want to help the earth and all of that. And yet they're not open to other capitalistic, free market, creative solutions to actually helping the earth.
Yeah, they have sort of sacred held beliefs, and it's like wind and solar are perfect. They even vilify nuclear. They fight nuclear plants when I think that that's a really promising technology. And it's so frustrating to see a movement that directs all of its energy and its capital and its attention towards solutions that don't work and, like you're saying, have huge environmental impacts, versus all the things that you just said as well, like actually how can capitalism solve this, or how can we get creative? Like what actually will solve the problem? That's what I'm really interested in. And that's also just why I had to speak out, because I was like, I'm not going to be on my 89, I'm not going to be 110 on my deathbed and thinking, having regrets that I didn't speak out because I was afraid of backlash. I was like, I just have to start saying what I've observed, and hopefully from that other people will resonate.
Next sponsor is Cozy Earth. I love my Cozy Earth sheets. I've got my Cozy Earth sheets on my bed right now. In these hot summer nights, it keeps you cool, temperature regulated, so soft, so luxurious feeling. And that's not just true of their sheets, which I love. It's true of their towels. It's true of their clothes, all of their loungewear. I've got these new loungewear, these pants from Cozy Earth that I have been wearing nonstop since I got them. Because even though it is so hot in August, like these keep me cool, but they're super comfy. I wore my Cozy Earth pajamas last night, which I love so much, y'all. I am a Cozy Earth raving fan. You will be too. Go to cozyearth.com. Use code relatable for 40% off your order. That's cozyearth.com, code relatable. Okay, let's get to the transformation moment for you, or season for you. So during this time, and I'll just kind of go over this quickly. You produced a video about AOC that AOC was in, and she was just kind of explaining her platform and who she is. And this video that you helped produce was used in her campaign. I don't know if it went viral, but it circulated a lot at the time, and it basically helped her win. And I'm sure that was something that you were proud of, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so I met AOC in 2017, right before she won the primary in 2018, that June. We're the same age. We're the same class. So we were, in our late 20s, and I really was taken with her. I think she's very charismatic, and she comes off very authentic to me. And we hit it off at this small event that I was at that was for Democrats running to take back the House after Trump had gotten elected. And so, it was a no-brainer for me to cover her story for Now This, and I think it got 10 million views within a week. And so that was 2018. And then, COVID happened, 2020. I started working from home, and then I had my
first. For Now This?
Yes. I worked for Now This till 2021.
And when did you get married?
2019.
Okay.
Yeah, September 2019. And I was still very much in it going into my wedding. My wedding was sustainable. I tried to have less waste, which is nothing wrong with that. Totally do that. But I don't know. I just always felt like it was a little bit out of alignment for me. I felt really exhausted around the content that I would make. It felt very forced. Even coming here today and talking, I'm I'm just going to talk from my authentic self. It's energizing versus exhausting. And when I would go on my trips and I interviewed Greta Thunberg in Sweden and stuff, I was so exhausted because it felt fake, and I couldn't fully go there and really say what I believed because I was still really in this mindset of you have to act and talk a certain way. And it was all kind of connected, whether it's the climate movement or sort of this ideology that I had absorbed from my old job. It just was a very out of alignment
it's never enough. It seems in the climate movement, it's never enough. There's always more to do.
Right.
And the timeline of when the world is going to end keeps shifting.
Yeah.
And it's just a big weight on your shoulders. One thing that I notice about it, and I'm interested to know if this played into your shift at all, is it just feels very anti-human. Mm-hmm. Anything that is good or more convenient for humans is automatically seen as bad. And the population is a problem. Mm-hmm. That's what I see in the climate change movement a lot, is the population is the problem. If we just had 90% fewer people, then life would be good. And I'm well, that's a really sad and pessimistic mentality of the human race.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there's also this sort of what's the word, fetishizing of ancient humans, where you're the hunter-gatherers. And
the
now
Native Americans were so peaceful. Yeah. It was peaceful scalping. It was good. No, definitely a demonization of civilization.
Yes,
for sure.
Exactly. And that was, again, when I go back to saying, I have a positive personality, my natural disposition is to be optimistic. So that is where, the rubber started to hit the road. Because I was my natural character is positive about the human condition. And now I'm so happy to be like, I love civilization. Like I love capitalism. But yeah, so it was really hard. And I think it also took sort of a turn because when I covered it in 2016, there's religious undertones here, but there was a poster that said Standing Rock awakens the world that I posed with. And I felt really like positive, like I'm on the right side of history. There was a Native American legend that they would fight this black snake after 7 generations, and then we were at the 7th generation. There was all these symbolisms around religion. So I was like, oh, I'm on the right side of history. And then like over the years, it became what you're saying, where it was like, no climate justice without justice. And you're like, wait, what are we talking about? Like we've lost the plot. Like I thought we're trying to clean up pollution. And now it's like, we've got to break down capitalism in America and like restructure society from the ground up. And I'm like, wait, I don't subscribe. And then I honestly just kind of went quieter. I stopped posting a lot, especially like over COVID. And I just didn't say what I believed, and I kept quiet. And I thought maybe I was going to keep quiet for my entire life because I didn't want to get the backlash. But like the internal frustrations and second guessings were growing, and almost like I would present one thing to my audience now, this is like 20 teens, and then like maybe over a glass of wine with like a trusted friend, I'd be like, well, actually, single-use plastic has a lower carbon footprint than plastic. It's like I knew that it was more complicated, but I was so afraid to wade into it because of just the backlash from like the following I had built and my coworkers and the culture.
What was it about getting married that started to shift your mind even more?
So I think it was that time at home away from, so I got married September 2019, so COVID was only 6 months later. Even like going on my honeymoon and like feeling anxious like on my honeymoon, like it's just like sort of starting to realize that my climate perspective was interacting in a negative way with my like outside of work life, where I couldn't even like enjoy my honeymoon because I was like, oh, I should be at the climate protest that's happening right now instead of like in France on my honeymoon. So there was that. And then going through COVID, there was 2 things that really started to make me go, wait a minute, what's going on here? One was the outrolling of PPE, and all of a sudden you had plastic barriers between every restaurant table and every office desk, and you had people wearing disposable masks every single day and throwing them out. And I'm like, I have been guilting myself about a plastic straw for the last 5 years, and I've now used more plastic in a day than I ever have. And also like we're completely fine. We can deal with it. And in a lot of ways, I didn't know at the time, and maybe we'll never really know how much these things were really helping, but I was like, it's saving lives. So like plastic has a positive side to it. And it kind of broke me out of my black and white thinking about plastic. And then with the world shutting down, and they have these emissions charts that are like up, and it was like went down by like 2% or whatever it was. And I'm like, wait a minute. The world has been shut down now for weeks. The entire world, we cannot go outside, no one's flying, and we're only limiting our carbon emissions by 5% or whatever it was. Yeah. What does the climate movement want from us? Because ultimately, to achieve climate net zero, whatever people throw around, we would have to end civilization. And I don't think that that's a good trade-off. Like I'd rather live with some climate change and adapt to it and have our modern lives and modern conveniences than shut down the world and live like in a cave, like caveman times. Yeah. So yeah, that was that. And then obviously you have kids, and I feel like it just totally foundationally changes you. I had my son in March of 2022. And I'm like, first of all, I'm going to be using single-use diapers. I'm going to be single-use wife. So you kind of have to just be selfish because you're so exhausted. And I don't want my son to absorb from me any pathologies around consumption as a modern human. I think it's sort of a weird, again, going back to this like religious undertones. It's like this feeling of like original sin where it's like, oh, you were born in 2025 and like, you use single-use. I was just like, this is dumb. I don't want him to feel this way. So like, I need to let it go. And I get it because people are now like, you just don't care. And I'm like, no, I just think that it's fine. Like we have the infrastructure to deal with this stuff. Like it's okay to consume. And I had this sort of zero-sum, fear-based relationship to consumption that I like literally thought it was world ending. I would feel guilty every time I'd throw something out and all that. And I was just like, I gotta let this go.
Yeah. So obviously you got over this fear of having children that you said that you had when you were worried that the world was going to end. What was that like? I'm sure that your husband had something to do with that and saying, okay, like we're gonna have kids.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was ever like adamantly like I'm never gonna have kids. It was like more like moments where I would think about it and I would be anxious about it. I never like took a strong stance, but it was definitely like in my internal world, it would be like a belief that I would have at any given time. But I think my husband is not like political and like he doesn't care about this type of stuff. He's just more steady. And so he's just a grounding force for me that like, I'm like over here, like thinking about every single thing. And he's just like, it's good.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. And, I just think you just building your own life and like having sort of the world that is your family is such a perspective giving thing where you realize like this is your domain to input your values onto your kids and create the world that you want them to live in within like the four doors of your home. And so I just had to be very mindful of like, what was I bringing into that space for them?
I am so excited to tell you about Paleo Valley. If you don't already get your beef sticks and your other protein products from Paleo Valley, then what are you doing? These beef sticks are incredible. They are the only beef sticks that don't make me feel bad for whatever reason, whatever ingredient is in other beef sticks to preserve it, whatever it is, they don't make me feel good. That is not true about Paleo Valley's beef sticks. They taste so good. They make me feel great. It's a great, healthy, protein-packed snack, grass-fed and finished, totally organic. I love their superfood bars that taste so good, no fake ingredients. I have been using their watermelon electrolytes every day as well. Incredible. Tastes like a watermelon Jolly Rancher without any fake sugar or fake flavoring or anything. We love their protein powder. We put that in our kids' smoothies, in their pancakes, making sure that they have the protein they need. It is all so top-notch, so healthy, so good. Go to paleovalley.com. Use code Allie for 15% off your first order. That's paleovalley.com, code Allie. Okay, this is kind of putting you on the spot, but I think that you can probably come up with this answer easily. If there is one thing that you could tell, say there's a conservative out there who doesn't care about the environment at all, and they're like, whatever, everything that environmentalists say is a total hoax, we shouldn't care, think about it at all. My first question is, what would you tell them? What is actually true about how we should steward the earth and the environment in a way that is healthy?
Yeah.
And then my second question is, what would you tell the progressive climate change fanatic to shake them out of their stupor? So we'll start with like, what is something true about the environment and how we can actually care for it?
Yeah, I think the simplest thing, it's so basic. We've known this for decades, is honestly, I think like litter. Like it sounds so like, but it's like the Nancy Reagan, like I think her campaign was like, don't litter or whatever. I think just cleaning up after yourself, leaving, like if you're going somewhere into nature and never leaving anything behind, like I still really subscribe to those things. That's so basic. And start there. I like when it comes to like your consumption and stuff, I really do think that humans are so industrious and so good at coming up with problem solving. So I think we will have a fossil free future, but it will probably just be a new technology that we don't even know about yet. So I wouldn't worry about it. And just, live your best life. Be grateful for what you have, that we have all these modern conveniences. Yeah. And for the other person, it's so tough. And I was actually talking to someone yesterday and she was like, oh my gosh, I love your content. I've lost a friend to the climate movement. This girl went to a college in Maine and just doesn't want to have kids now. Thinks that like in this really culty climate movement that she was in, they suggest like suicide. Like it's like really bad. So there are people out there who are really, really radicalized. I don't think people really understand the mindset. I was never that bad, but I think it goes back to perspective, historical perspective of how grateful we should be. Human life used to be toil and short, and you would die young because of just how unsafe it was and difficult it was. And now, thanks to the technology of fossil fuels, we can have, a beautiful set like this and conversations like this under lights and technology. And we live such amazing lives that kings, even in the 1700s, would not have lived as good as us. And so I think bringing in that perspective of, hey, we're not in late stage capitalism 10 years away from dying, but look at these facts. Look at how good we have it compared to our ancestors. Even for women, I think realizing in areas that don't have access to fossil fuels, 5 hours a day could be spent collecting dung and wood to cook for your family. Fuel collection is how they spend, like that's their job, 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
So just bringing in that and maybe shifting some of this guilt into gratitude I think goes so far.
Yeah.
And just having that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the religious undertones, and I see that so much that it really is almost like a pagan religion. It seems to me that those who are all in on climate change or trying to fight climate change, like stewardship of creation, that's what I would say that we are called to. We are called to care for, the world around us, treat it really good, leave it better than we found it, all of that. Try not to waste. I think that's probably just good, responsible living anyway. But it goes from stewardship to worship. And I think that when you have this mentality shift from, okay, I am a steward of the world around me, I'm going to care for it. I'm going to do the best that I possibly can to cultivate it, to make it beautiful and good and healthy and productive for my neighbors. That's a human first mentality. That is saying, I am a caretaker of the world around me versus a worshiper of the world around me, in which basically you believe that you have to submit to all of the elements and that the world and nature and animals are actually more important than humans. And I don't know if you're a Christian, but it really goes all the way back to the very beginning when God made Adam and Eve. The first task that he gave Adam was to work. He had to name the animals and he had to work the ground and to keep it. God put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, not a jungle. So a garden has to be tamed. It has to be cultivated. And Adam and Eve were given the responsibility to not only populate the earth, so that's one thing against the climate movement today, but also to care for it.
Yeah.
And to work it and to be in charge of it. There's actually like a dominion authority aspect to it. And I see the exact opposite thing when it comes to climate change. Humans are bad. We are a debit in that we take away from all things good, that civilization has been a net negative for human beings, and that we just need to let the elements of the world be untamed and do as they will to us. I mean, it's like, it's paganism. It's worshiping the creature rather than the creator.
I mean, everything that you're saying resonates with me so much. And it's not like when I started making content, I was raised Episcopalian, so I am religious, but sort of in a cultural way. But as I'm making this content more, like so many of the themes that you're mentioning resonate with me so much. It's almost like a discovery. Like as I was making more content on my TikTok and Instagram, I'm like, oh, here are these themes. And like you said, anti-human, like feeling guilty for just being alive. Like that is one thing that like why I feel, you have your whys, like why am I making content? Why am I speaking out? And I'm like, I don't want people walking around feeling guilty for just being alive. And going back to this original sin where it's like, no, like it's okay. Like we were born into this society and like you're saying, like leave it better than you found it, do your best. And another thing to think about with the climate movement, which I think is such a good point, is that they diminish all of nature's beauty. We look in America, we have so many amazing blessings, all these national parks that are just like so beautiful. And I think the healthy way to look at it is like you're saying, being a steward, honoring nature's beauty and like looking at it, whatever. The climate movement turns everything into a carbon emission. So it's no longer like, oh, look at this deer. It's beautiful. It grazes. It travels this way. Its carbon emissions are this many tons a year. Wow. And you see places in Europe where this has really taken hold more than here. We're lucky that it's not as bad, where they're culling deer, they're culling reindeer, they're culling cattle from generations old farms because of their methane emissions, not taking into account, oh, I don't know, maybe this land in Ireland has evolved alongside these cows. This is a 10th generation farmland. This is part of the Irish culture and heritage, and it's so complex and so beautiful. And the climate movement comes along and they're like, these are the emissions and you need to kill 100,000 of them. And that truly happens in places, luckily not in the US as much.
But like the Dutch farmers,
it's the Dutch farmers.
To them.
It's so awful. And I agree with you so much. It's like we've totally lost the plot and it's subverted all of like this goodwill of wanting to help the environment. And where we've landed is a really destructive movement that is anti-human and anti the environment. It's so lost.
Let me tell y'all about the Think Summit. This is THINQ. This summit is unlike any other Christian event. It is immersive. There are hands-on workshops. There are even people showing you how to make sourdough and harvest chickens. But we are talking about Christian ideas, how to live the Christian life, how to represent Christianity well in the public sphere. I am also going to be speaking Nashville, October 2nd through 4th, and my keynote will be titled Toxic Empathy, How We Avoid Confusing Worldly Love with Biblical Love. Biblical love, of course, is bound with the truth. There's all types of speakers, 30 keynotes. We've got Dr. Henry Cloud, we've got Laura Logan, we've got Gabe and Rebecca Lyons, so many others. Come see me speak. Grab your ticket today. Go to thinksummit.com. That's THINQ summit.com. Use code Allie for 20% off. That is thinksummit.com, code Allie. You mentioned that when you were a climate activist or influencer, you focused more on, the rich people not using plastic straws than building infrastructure in places like Puerto Rico or Guatemala to actually deal with the trash. And it does seem like climate change is a very posh issue for elite people to use as a vehicle for virtue or for morality. And you really can just signal at it the way that Leonardo DiCaprio does, true virtue signal, and say, look how good of a person I am. Meanwhile, we will probably never come close to the carbon footprint that he has created from all of the times he's flown around in his private jet, which is true of all of these activists, by the way.
And also, I'm just if you're going to fly around in a private jet, just own it. I get a lot less annoyed at the Jeff Bezoses of the world and Lauren Sanchez. I'm they're living it. They're having a good time versus Leo shows up at the wedding and I'm come on, you've been lecturing us for years. You should have gone over in a canoe and arrived. Well, I also think it's so interesting. We talk about this a lot. And when I was writing for the Free Press about my Standing Rock article, is that Greta Thunberg now, who was a big climate activist, is now pro-Palestine activist. I
saw that.
And so
Didn't she try to sail there or something?
She did. It was ridiculous. And it's an omni-cause, right? It's just the anti-human, anti-civilization, anti-West mindset moved from climate in the 2010s to now it's on to pro-Palestine. And they have this weird fetishizing of Palestine where they're well, it would be sustainable if Israel wasn't there. It makes no sense. It's truly some crazy, pseudo-religious take on what the Palestinian people would be like. And in the same way that it was with the Native Americans would be like. And so it's just this mindset's moving from one thing to the other. I feel climate's kind of moved out of vogue. And also I feel if I had really come out at the height of it in 2018, I would have had to be even braver than I am now, because I think it would have been really scary. I think the wave crested on climate a bit. And I wasn't brave enough to go out earlier, and now it's moved on to its new cause. I'm so intrigued to see what the next thing will be.
Yeah, I have this small anecdote. So my husband and I, for our 10-year anniversary, we went to Hawaii, and there is a culture, I think the people who live in Hawaii can tell you this, among a lot of the natives there of anti-colonialist and even anti-white. And the mentality is, we've had this land, or generations have had this land for so long. Tourists came in, Americans came in, they made it a state, they changed our culture, they made it, commercialized and all of these things and hurt our environment. And obviously it's a very blue state, very progressive state, and very pro-fighting climate change through whatever government policy possible. Well, there is this cliff outside of our resort that my husband and I were going to jump off of. We went there that morning. We were the only ones there. We went back that afternoon, and it was a public place, and a bunch of locals were there. And we were appalled that in the 2 hours between when we were there this morning and no one was there, and when we were there that afternoon when so many locals was there, how trashed it was. And my husband and I were so careful. We didn't want to leave anything. We didn't want it to seem like we weren't taking care of the place around us because we're the tourists that people don't like. But there was soggy pizza. There was trash. There were cans. I mean, everywhere. And I'm not saying, oh, well, this is what everyone in Hawaii is like. I just think it reminds me a lot of Standing Rock. And we see this kind of thing a lot. It's is it really a love for your land, a love for the environment, a love for your culture? Or is it just anti-civilization, anti-white people, anti the oppressor who is not really oppressing you.
Right.
Is it just progressive ideology and you're using the climate as a virtuous seeming excuse?
Yes, I think you're like 100% right. And I think that the college educated, ironically white person is the one, they're the ones who are going to all this stuff and creating these movements. Like they're the ones who pushed the Standing Rock thing. Like there were some Native American activists who started it, but it really got taken on by like the college educated like white elite that we see that now has moved on to pro-Palestine. And so it's all virtue signaling and a weird, again, like this myth of like the noble savage. Like it's so messed up to say, but it's like all these college educated kids who are like, oh, my culture is horrible, but like this culture, I'm going to put you on a pedestal. And it's actually really like degrading and looks down on the culture. And it's not really like respectful and sort of twisted.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of lost young people looking for meaning, I think.
Okay, so you've weighed in on the Mamdani. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yes, Zohran Mamdani.
Yes. Okay, so if people don't know, he is the Democratic mayoral candidate for New York City. He is an out-and-out socialist, and this is not us just deducing that he has said that he is a socialist. He has advocated adamantly and persistently for defunding the police, but he won his primary against Cuomo, and so he will probably win because a Republican probably won't win the mayoral race in New York City. Yeah. And Cuomo, I think, maybe is still running.
Yeah.
But you've had some commentary on him. So what do you think?
Yeah, so I actually did a video from my car, classic, the front seat think piece, on an impulse right after he won. And I just said, guys, I'm telling you, if I were 25, I would have loved Zohran Mamdani. When I was 26, I loved AOC. Yeah. And then I just explained my anecdote on this that I think really like hammers it home is that these well-meaning leftist policies really are the road to hell is paved with good intentions and end up creating the problem that they're trying to avoid. And in New York, actually, it was a law that Cuomo signed into law in 2019. It's called the Affordable Housing Act or something of 2019, where they capped the amount you could raise rent on rent-controlled apartments to just 2%. And the idea, the well-meaning Democrats in the state house are like, we've got to, these pesky landlords, they're so greedy, they're raising the rent on these rent-controlled apartments. Problem is, these rent-controlled apartments could have the same owner, same tenant since the 1970s, right? So people are in these rent-controlled apartments for 50 years, 40 years. Yeah. They don't really let the landlord in. They completely, by the time someone's leaving an apartment after 40 years, they're holes basically, or not even that. They just have all the old appliances. You have to bring them up to code. And the original rent from 1970 was $400. Yeah. So if you raise 2%, that would be in 2025, $408 on an apartment that needs $100,000 in renovations to get it up to 2025 codes. So what's happened is that now, since this law has been in effect now for 5 or 6 years, there are tens of thousands of empty rent-controlled apartments in New York City right now because the landlords cannot put $100,000 or $60,000 into an apartment to bring it up to code and only charge $400 a month. Right. So now we have this huge housing shortage in New York City, and everyone's blaming on the left. They're saying the capitalists, these greedy landlords, and they're so living in like a projection because a lot of these landlords are going to be, maybe they own a building, they're first generation immigrants, they own a building, they own 2 buildings. Yeah. And when you hurt them with overregulation, who comes in and buys up these apartments is the BlackRocks, is the big capitalist, bad guys that they're so afraid of. And so I'm trying to explain to people like, you guys, these leftist policies that are really regulatory end up creating the monster that you don't want to have there, whether it's the housing shortage or these big behemoth real estate businesses that you feel aren't connected to the person and can abuse the system, which is a real problem. Yeah. And I just was like, you guys, road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like, I promise you, and basically saying like, we need less taxes. We need less government in our life. We need more room for innovation, for human flourishing, because individuals are the ones who can create the capital that creates all the amazing things that we have here in the US. And when the government gets involved and overregulates, you have this, show that we see in New York. And luckily New York, it's such a big economy and it's still under the weight of all these bad policies still going, but it's just so hard to see it. Like, it's like a slow fall. It's like a slow moving car crash. And like, I think he's going to win because I think he has all the energy. He has the right smile and he's a Nepo baby, to be like clear. You know that, right? Like, he was just in Uganda for his wedding. Yeah. And so, New York Post always has the best commentary and they're like, Yeah, actually, it was really sad. Because, sorry, like, I'm not to make light of this, but there was a shooting in New York yesterday.
Yeah.
And he commented on it, and someone's like, wow, I'm really glad you're, after all your years of defunding the police, and you're commenting behind armed guards in Uganda on this devastation that happened. Like, why don't you have social workers guarding your wedding?
Right.
Like,
yeah,
he's just such a hypocrite.
Last sponsor for the day is Patriot Mobile. This is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. There is one wireless provider that stands in the gap for every American that believes that freedom is worth fighting for. That is Patriot Mobile. For more than 12 years, Patriot Mobile has been on the front lines fighting for God-given rights and freedoms while also providing exceptional nationwide cell phone service with access to all 3 of the major networks. You will see how easy switching is when you switch over to Patriot Mobile. They've got a 100% US-based customer service team that makes switching super simple. Just go to patriotmobile.com/Allie. Use code Allie for 1 free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/Allie, code Allie. He's talked about, how difficult it is to be an immigrant and all of that stuff. But both of his parents, extremely well-off, successful, elite, sophisticated circles of American society that most of us will never get to enter. That is where he comes from. And I'm not even saying that's bad.
No,
but,
exactly.
I'm saying own it. Don't post a video of yourself eating like whatever it is with your hands, which is disgusting, by the way. So many reasons why that's wrong. But to try to cosplay as an oppressed poor person.
It annoys me so much.
Come on.
And I think the thing is, I try to say this because people on my account, they're like, you don't care anymore. You've given up. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I actually do care. We all want the same things, right? We want to see less inequality. We want to see less poverty. I want to see more people able to live the American dream and prosper and flourish and follow their dreams. I just think that the way we get there is different than what the snake oil salesman that's Mamdani is. He's selling a bill of goods that does not work. And everywhere socialism is tried, it is a civilization ruining practice. And talk to the people who are children of immigrants from Cuba, Venezuela, USSR. This experiment goes all over the world and never ends well. And I want people to be more successful in life, and we realize that socialism is not the problem, and there's like so much misunderstanding, I think, from the groupthink that I left, where they project onto me like, well, you don't care because you're not pushing socialism, and I'm like, no, I do care, but socialism doesn't work. It makes people's lives worse, and so that's another thing I'm trying to speak out and be like, guys, we all want the same things, but we're just thinking we get there a different way.
Yeah. So what do you think that progressives like him and other progressives running for office over the next few years, what do you think they're going to do with the climate change issue? Yeah. Are they going to let go of it? Has it officially crested and no one's going to talk about it? Is it going to be another wave? What do you think the future of that collision of socialism and climate change looks like?
That's a great question. I looked at Mamdani's website with his policies, and it's not very climate change focused, which is honestly smart because working class people do not like climate change. Like, it is a very elite topic. I think the only thing on his website about it was making schools green or something, like nothing that big. Yeah. So I think that it has crested. Like, I was a big like Green New Deal person. Now I look back and I'm like, made no sense. Covered that a lot. And that was a big thing. And I think now people are realizing that creates an affordability crisis. It's not really connecting with people. And so the smart liberals that we're seeing, the AOCs and Mamdanis, are going back to the, kitchen table issues, but their ideas are very bad, but that's why they're getting success. Like $30 minimum wage, like affordable groceries, like they've figured out that the climate is not selling. So I hope that it's passed, but I do think that the mindset we were discussing of people feeling just guilty for being alive and having this shame and walking around feeling horrible being a human, I feel like that's so pervasive in our culture, even if it's not manifesting now in climate movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. Okay, if people want to read more from you and hear more about your commentary, where can they go?
Yeah, so I work for the Free Press. So our website is thefp.com. I run the social medias there. So if you ever message the social media on any of those accounts, it probably will be me seeing it. But then my personal accounts on Instagram, I'm Lucy Biggers. TikTok, I'm Lucy Biggers. The only thing I'm different on is Twitter/X, I'm LL Biggers. But all the content is basically the same.
Yeah.
I'm on Substack Notes. Like, you got to be everywhere.
Yeah, got it. Well, thank you so much, Lucy. And I really appreciate you being so open about your transformation and how you've changed your mind. I think that alone will just help a lot of people think more critically about what they believe. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.